Okay, we successfully installed Management Studio. Now let's open it. To access the cluster server, you need to give the cluster name, SQL Server cluster name, or the network name, this name. Okay, if you are installing one more SQL Server resource group, that means you will be installing the named instance. For example, if you install active, that means you will be installing two instances on this box. So one is default instance assigned to this resource group, and you will be installing one more instance which will be named instance. Okay, if it is named instance, then you will be specifying the network name slash whatever the instance name. Okay, in this case, this is a default instance. You will have to specify just the network name. This is the SQL Server cluster name that you will use to connect from Management Studio, or if you are using the SQL cluster name in the application connection string, then you have to use this. Okay, to access standalone machine, you have to specify the server name here. So to access this cluster, we have to specify vSQL. Okay, now here you can see this is the server we connected, vSQL, and it is 11.0 service pack 1. Okay, so you can see here the version is 11.0.3128. In order to know whether it is just service pack 1 or any cumulative updates after the service pack 1, you may have to go through the build history. So here our number is 11.0.3128. This is the number. So we installed up to this build. Okay, so still we have a cumulative update package 1, 2, 3. Okay, there are so many errors that has been fixed in cumulative update package 3. So later we will install cumulative update cu3. So that is what it is now. So to see what is the okay, so to see the cluster name and the node name, etc., we can use this query. Interesting. Okay, let's type that. Computer name physical net BIOS. Okay, node 1 is active. Okay, this is the node that is currently serving the cluster. Okay, likewise you have the machine name and the server name. Okay, uh, this is the server name or instance name. Okay, you can use the server name or host name. Host name is the node 1. This is where you are trying to access the database. If you are accessing the database from your laptop, you will see the laptop, the name, the computer name. Okay, so this is how you view the to view the different versions. For example, product level, product version. This will give the service pack and the version name. Okay, so we installed SQL Server cluster service pack 1. Now we will install the SQL Server on passive node, which is node 2. Okay, let's go to node 2. Okay, before going to node 2, we have to remove the ISO for the node 1, otherwise it might give a problem. So let's remove the ISO file for this server, and let's use the ISO file. Okay, we are in node 2 now. Now let's add this node to the existing cluster. Adding the node to existing cluster means install the SQL Server on this node, which is node 2, and add the instance to the existing SQL Server cluster resource group. Okay, so let's go ahead and start installing SQL Server on node 2. Now you have to select this option, add node to a SQL Server failover cluster. Select the evaluation edition, whichever the edition that you are using. We got some warning messages here. Cluster has not been validated or verified completely, but that doesn't stop us from adding this node to the cluster. But in the production environment, you may have to fix those errors. Okay, here you have one instance. This is the instance that you have to add. Whichever the instance on the node 1 has to be same instance on the node 2. Okay, but if you have assigned this instance to some other cluster, or if you have installed default as a standalone, then it will give a problem. Okay, so it is saying I'm going to install this instance on this node for this cluster. Okay, that's what it means. So you have to see what features it is going to install on this node. So whichever features that is there for this cluster, so those features will be installed for this instance on this node. Okay, currently this is the node participating in this cluster. So once we add this node, you will see these two nodes are participating in this cluster and for this instance. Okay, let's click next. Here okay, so it's all pre-selected because you are adding the instance node 2 to the existing cluster, so you cannot do anything here. Okay, this is just informational message screen, and let's click next. So here you have to specify the password for the agent as well. And install. Alright, it will take some time. I will pause the video here and I will resume after the installation. Okay, we successfully added the node to the existing cluster. Let's see if we can fail over the SQL Server resource group from node 1 to node 2. Now you have the second node here as possible owner. Now if you take a look at this property of the SQL Server, then it should have the node 2. Now it has the node 2. Okay, let's fail over the SQL Server cluster to the node 2. The cluster storage is not connected to the node. Okay, now let us see what's the status of the cluster resource. Okay, it looks like the cluster resource, the physical disk shareable storage is not connected to the node 2, hence it is failing. Let's take a look at SSIS initiator. Okay, it is reconnecting. Interesting. Let's disconnect that. Now connect it back. We have the shareable storage SSIS virtual disk on the domain controller machine, which is 110. So let's quickly connect to that. Okay, so now this time it connected, so it should appear here. Okay, now we got all the shareable storage to be available on node 2. Now we should be able to fail over the services. Okay, now we have the SQL cluster running on node 2. So whatever the physical disk that is related to SQL cluster, it failed over to node 2. So the remaining disk, the available storage is still remaining on node 1. Okay, so this is how we fail over from one node to another node. So let's fail over back to, okay, so since we failed over, it got disconnected. During the failover time, if there are any transactions that are still in the process, that is open transactions during the failover, so will be rolled back. So you have to initiate, application has to initiate the transactions again. So let's now take a look at these values. So when I refresh, it's trying to connect to the cluster. It should be able to successfully connect. Okay, it looks like connection is timing out. Let's increase the connection timeout to 30 seconds and let's see if that works out. Okay, it returned the results. Now the server that is hosting the cluster is node 2, and you have connected to this is the instance name, and this is the host. This is where we are connecting. This is where the client is trying to connect, and the service pack 1 and the version number. Now let's try to refresh this connection. Okay, it looks like it looks like the connection is timing out. Okay, it took a little longer to connect, maybe because of the virtual operating systems, which is responding pretty slowly on my laptop. Okay, so ultimately the point is we are able to successfully fail over the services onto the node 2 and access the cluster. Okay, so let's see how far we have completed in the nodes. Okay, we installed SQL 2012 failover cluster, and after that our next step is to install service pack 1, but we already installed service pack 1 along with RTM version, because we couldn't install RTM version of cluster, so we used the slipstream to install the 2012. Okay, so we covered this point. So instead of applying service pack 1, what we do, let us update the cumulative update CU3 of service pack 1. So before that, we need to download the CU3. Let us see if I have the CU3 on my laptop. Okay, I have the CU2. Okay, let's apply CU2. Okay, let me download the CU3. It doesn't take much longer. So this is the service pack 1, and we need to provide the email ID. Okay, it will take some time for me to download the CU3. and I will pause the video here and I will resume after the download process is completed.